So this is 2018 August, you started Delphi. Initially, what was your focus? Was it investments? Was it research? What was it?
Yeah, it was all research, honestly. For us, I think we thought we understood it well, but we wanted to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And we had this thesis that fundamentals were going to matter. And again, in 2018, no one was thinking this other than Multicoin, who was one of our first customers, as well as Hashed. So, I always shout at those guys out because they were the only two people who paid for us, even though we pretended like a lot of people paid for us and then gave out our research away for free.
Yeah.
But essentially, our first report ever was on Bitcoin. We dropped that in December 2018. And essentially we were like, hey, we need to cover Bitcoin because it's obviously the biggest asset, and if Bitcoin doesn't go up, we don't think anything else will get attention. So, Bitcoin had dropped from $6,000 to $3,000 at this point. So we thought we were gonna nail the bottom, and that report is kind of like legendary and something that we hold very dear to our hearts because we now have this 60-page amazing state of Bitcoin report that we dropped at when Bitcoin was 3,100, and now obviously it looks kind of pretty legendary. Our second report was on Ethereum, which I remember was pretty funny because twofold. It got people very mad at us very early on, even though our Bitcoin report got people very in love with us, and we're like, oh, this is obviously objectively one of the best Bitcoin reports ever written because we obviously put a lot of time into it, and it was written in a way that you could hand it to anyone on Wall Street and they could kind of take it seriously.
Was that always your focus, the Wall Street?
Yeah, we wanted to bridge the gap because we had come from that world that we knew that's where the capital was, and we actually thought there was something that a lot of people on Wall Street would find sexy about this stuff that wasn't being communicated to them in the right way.
Right.
And so we thought we could really bridge that gap. Although, to be honest, as we dove down that rabbit hole, we realized it would take very long, and we honestly ended up just loving the crypto native and degen nature of things. So obviously over time, and I'm sure as people have seen, Delphi has just gotten way in the other direction of hey, instead of waiting for the institutions to catch up, we're just going to lead the charge. We're going to be as deep as we can in this thing, and eventually they're going to find their way here. And hopefully they will end up reading Delphi research, but we're not going to make beginner content. We want to make the deepest possible content for the people who are here now.
Right.
So that was a shift, but yeah, when we first started, the goal was to bridge that gap.
Right. So August 2018, research focus. When was it that the lab spun out? When was it when the investments arm spun out?
Yeah. So essentially, again, because we only had those two customers on the research side, we were not paying any bills, and because we had quit middle of the year, we were quickly running out of our savings.
Right.
So essentially, the way that we bootstrapped ourselves, because we never really raised money, was we essentially just did consulting. So I think we are definitely one of, but maybe potentially the first company to ever get paid by a DAO by Kane and Synthetics back in February 2019. And essentially, what we had done there is we were writing a lot of deep research reports about these protocols, and Kane and the team reached out and they're like, hey, you understand synthetics better than anyone, and we also have a lot of work. We need people to help with risk management, etc., figuring out incentive design and everything like that. So that's when they were, came to us and actually helped, fund us, paid us for an engagement where we started consulting. Then we ended up working with Aave, transitioned them from ETHLend to Aave. Work with projects like Balancer, Compound, Lido, etc. And honestly, that's how consulting really grew, and that's where Labs ended up being something that we ended up launching.
Right.
Before Labs started, though, Ventures was started, which I've told this story a million times, so I don't want to go into it too much. But we did have an anchor investor who ended up bailing on us, who ended up levering up on credit cards and ended up investing. But yeah, the goal was always to invest. So. We knew that we could build expertise, build a brand, build credibility. The goal was to use that to raise money because we really didn't have any money at that point. But then obviously things changed and we had to create our own way. But yeah, I think the way that we think about Delphi at large is every one of these divisions has come out of something that we've seen as a gap in the market. So obviously research was the first, and now you obviously have a bunch of different research providers that are all doing great work. I think for us, we also saw a big gap in the venture fund market where we didn't think, funds were being value add enough, and that was our first MO for Delphi, was create the most value add fund in crypto. And then Labs was basically hey, with these two kind of different perspectives, we think we can also build very hard things that maybe people don't want to take risk on, where we may now have capital and the time and energy to be able to build in these verticals. So yeah, it's all kind of come out of what we say is duty, duty calls, and we'll try and answer in some way, shape, and form. And yeah, that's like how we got here.
Got it. When it comes to labs, right? Like I feel I've seen so many VCs then become like builders themselves, founders, right? And I feel you guys are already doing that side by side with labs. How does labs function, right? I remember you had Astroport and Mars, like huge protocols. So one of my very close friends, he was like a senior dev at Astroport and Mars, Rahul Mittal.
Oh,
and
nice,
he keeps like reminiscing of like his old days, and he keeps telling me like the culture there was awesome, right?
Amazing.
So tell me, how is the labs process like when you're shipping a company, right? How is that different from the venture arm, and like what is the mandate there?
Yeah, it's very different. That's a cool part. Even though we have this like 88 person like hive mind, every division, every company at Delphi has its own culture. And labs is probably, I mean, research is pretty degen too, but labs is definitely very degen, but they have to be very long-term thinkers, which I think is like such a good perspective for us to have on the, on the Delphi hive mind side. Jose and Luke do a really great job of leading labs teams and thinking about things that are worth spending so much time building, because like on the building side you really can't chase like trends and narratives.
Right.
Once you start building, you have to be focused on that thing for if not 12 months, longer, right? Years. So that is very, very different. And I think, one cool part is when we were first just a research firm and we had a lot of these funds as our clients, we thought we had such a good insight of like, all right, I'll grab that after. Yeah, we felt like we had such a good insight on like what was going on in the market. We're like, oh, like, having a fund will give us that much more, insight into what's going on. And then we started a fund, we're like, oh fuck, we were totally blind about this space. The building side is probably the space we're most blind to. Because, and not saying that founders are liars or anything like that, but obviously when you're raising a round and stuff, if you're building on XYZ chain, you're gonna say, this is the best chain to build on, it's very easy to build on, I'm gonna build fast, whatever the fuck. And from the building side, we realized a lot of the things that we were being told at surface level that you couldn't really do diligence. Like you had to take a founder or many founders and kind of curate and aggregate kind of that at its word. You basically couldn't take at face value, right?
Right.
So building that expertise in-house was like a game changer for us for sure. Yeah, I think building is something that like, even going forward is gonna be, especially with AI, is just gonna become more and more precipient and top of mind for funds. And I think, going back to what you said earlier, I think, again, I'm super fucking biased, but I think like a lot of funds are gonna look like a Delphi model going forward in the next 5-10 years. And we really do think about like what is the next generation of a venture fund look like? And I think, A16Z, they obviously get a lot of slack on Twitter and stuff, but like, dude, these guys are legends. Like they've built something fucking incredible. They've moved the needle for the world. They've invested and helped build great like legendary companies. I think like they obviously pioneered this kind of like media and like service model that people like to make fun of and stuff. But I do think they were onto something. And I think for us, we kind of like got lucky. We didn't like strategize that this was going to be like the evolution of Delphi, but it ended up being this path. And I think like having this like media firm or like content model was very useful for us, mostly from the learning side and obviously the distribution side. And I think the builder thing is something that I think is like less appreciated right now because it's so fucking hard, but I think will be more appreciated, especially as, not that it gets easier to build, but it becomes more accessible to build.
Right.
We launched this last week, super excited about it. Essentially, we're running the playbook back in another area that we're interested in. And the way that we, built Delphi was this, we just talked about it. We started with research. We're starting with research on the intelligence side, on the AI side. So really, it's a free platform, right? So unlike Delphi Research on the crypto side, which is a subscription, a lot of people subscribe and everything like that, all these funds and stuff. On this, we want to build our credibility. We have no edge right now. Why the fuck would you pay us? It's all free, will be free, and we're just dropping, reports on things that we're interested in and want to learn about. First 2 reports already came out. One was on AI in this like entertainment era, which I think is a little bit more technical because it talks about like how like the algorithm, the dopamine hits, and how that's going to change for AI. I think it's like really interesting. And then the report that I sorry Paul, I liked even more was Ponderings, which was about video generation models, which I think is super cool. Basically TLDR, these things are 2 to 3 years behind text, but that means that you're about to see this huge renaissance, and I think that's going to be, I think that's when people really see the tangible value of these things. Whether it's like, I read this story where there was this couple that went on vacation, and they went to the hotel and they said, hey, we want to go to this cable car, and they showed a news video of like this beautiful cable car in the mountains, and they were like, oh, like we've this hotel has been around for 60 years, like there's no cable car on this island. They're like, no, like look at this. And they're like, oh yeah, there's no such thing. Like, I don't know. And they're like, but this is a video showing this. Like, it's right there. That's a mountain. And they realized that it was AI generated.
Yeah.
And then the couple wanted to sue the reporter because they're like, this reporter lied to us.
Yeah.
And then they found out that the reporter was AI generated. Then they were like, all right, well, it's the news station. We need to sue the news station.
Yeah.
That news station was AI generated. So I think you're going to start seeing the world really wake up to, you know, like us and people in crypto, like, we're somewhat on the cutting edge because we're fucking living terminally online.
Yeah.
You see all this shit. You got to think about like your uncles and stuff. Like they don't know what's coming. And once they see it, they won't understand it. And I think that's I think these video generation models are going to bring that to everyone.
100%.